All right, so welcome to the January 4th edition of Scrapbook Live. I'm Megan Jacks. Thanks so much for joining us. For those of you who are tuning in, I have my comments off to the side here. Hopefully I'll be able to see everything. I forgot to grab my second device, so I'll be trying as best I can with that. But today's project we have from the blog, the Creative Memories blog. And this is a project from February 26th of 2021. So almost 2 years old. The sample uses the Emerald Gemstone Collection. It's beautiful. It's a very much a statement page, meaning you're going to put a little bit more time into this, use a little bit more paper, and really show off the patterns and everything of the papers. And then of course your photos that go with it. So when I saw this one, I've had this bookmarked for a while, right? I thought, oh, this would be a fantastic one to do, but it's going to be a little bit more like, do I really want to try to do that during a Scrapbook Live? Sometimes it's that borderline of how much is too much to try to do during one of these episodes. But I thought, you know what, this is for New Year's Eve. I could take some selfies of me and my kids. On New Year's Eve, we went to a friend's house for a party and thought, well, that would be a fun way to use this layout for those photos. So I made sure, you should see me on New Year's Eve, I had this ran like really quick, like, oh, we got to get these selfies, because I knew I was going to do this layout. So I am using the silver and gold collection with some selfies. So let me switch over to my desktop and I'll show you what I've got. Hold on here. I got to hit the right buttons. There we go. All right. So here is the papers that I'm using. And as you can see here that I'm using the silver and gold collection. There should be one more. Oh, there is the 4 pieces that I've got. I've already trimmed some of this down. I'm going to tell you guys, I totally cheated this morning. I got up, I started working through the layout because I realized it was a lot of cutting, that I want to show you the technique to do the cutting, but I didn't want to spend all the time doing all those cuts. Right? That's just a lot of cutting. So really this is all about a repetitive technique to make your L-shaped pieces. But then it comes down to kind of how I approached, 1, choosing my papers, 2, the actual layout itself, assembly, because this is all about assembly. How do you get these pieces all into place? And, maintain that background so that you can see almost like grout lines between those pieces. So I'm using the silver and gold collection, and I cheated, guys. My pictures, I did these photos, and honestly, the color in them was terrible. My friend's house, she had just a beautiful, warm, friendly lighting, but it was a little bit low. It was obviously at night, so it's not bright and sunny in our house, and so the colors were a little bit crazy. So I cheated, and I just turned everything to black and white. Then I didn't have to worry about what anyone was wearing. I didn't have to worry about background colors. I just went with black and white. It's going to look great with the silver and gold collection. So for this particular layout, one of the things you're going to need is a background paper. And here in the background, they look like they're using, they either used a piece of the tonal green paper from the Emerald Gemstone Collection, or they used parakeet shimmer. I cannot tell. I don't think it really specifically said here. And I honestly can't remember if we had parakeet shimmer back in early 2021. So if I was doing this with Emerald Gemstone, I would use parakeet shimmer as my background paper. One thing to note, I am going to be using black shimmer paper. One of the reasons I'm going to use a shimmer paper as compared to a tonal paper is because I will be using the repositionable adhesive. And if I need to move things around, that repositional adhesive is going to come up off of my cardstock or my shimmer paper without lifting any ink pattern. So if you're using a tonal printed paper here as your background, as you put things down and then you lift it up, if you need to rearrange something with your repositionable adhesive, you're more likely to lift a little bit of that, the pattern off the paper. Now our grout lines are pretty tight. I think there's no more than 1/8 of an inch, so it may not be noticeable, but honestly, you're gonna cover up so much of that pattern that if you have a cardstock to be that background, that's what I would go with. So wherever you see the light green in there, that is representing the background page. So I'm going to be using black shimmer paper. I could probably just use regular black paper or cardstock, but I really like the shimmer. So then I picked out 4 different papers from the silver and gold collection. I have the chevron zigzag, because I like to have all the colors there. I have this foiled paper. The opposite side of it is has the black dots on it. And then I have a lighter paper. It has the white background and it has a gold dots that are shaped in hexagons. The opposite side you can see is kind of that little bit of a stripe. And then of course this black paper, I believe this is out of the Shades of the Season Silver and Gold pack, or Shades of Silver and Gold pack. One thing I would like to note here, this was the first paper I chose, and I went ahead and made an L-shaped cut in this paper. And one thing you will know if you cut a paper like this is that you have, imagine this is an L shape, right? So you can see here, my pattern differs on, I have a vertical section and a horizontal section, so the pattern differs. So that is something to keep in mind when you're picking out your patterns. All the papers that are chosen in the sample they're all non-directional for the most part. There is one in here that has a very slight stripe to it, but everything else is mostly non-directional. So there's some ways around that we can talk about. You can cut strips and piece together your L-shaped pieces. That's a lot of work. It's a lot to get the angle just right to make that nice sharp 90-degree angle. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Once I realized what was going to happen with this paper, I actually changed some of my paper choices to go with things that were non-directional. I was going to use a different piece of paper for this instead of this black. This is the black with the gold flecks. I had thought I would use this paper, but then I was going to have the same problem, that my patterns were going to be different on the horizontal axis versus, or excuse me, the vertical axis versus the horizontal axis. So I found this paper and went with the non-directional pattern. And these other three, so these three all have non-directional patterns. And you could always also plan to use the opposite side depending on your pattern. I knew I could use this one no problem if I wanted to. I'll talk about that in a second because I think the sample uses a lot of different patterns. I ended up with just going with a 4 and thinking, well, I'll just use the back side, the flip side if I need to, because I didn't want to necessarily start cutting up 5 or 6 different sheets. I was willing to do 4 different sheets for this layout. I don't have a lot of scraps yet of this collection because I just really started working with it. But so the 4 paper is what I was willing to chop up. Just checking, everybody can hear me okay, correct? I've just been chatting. Okay, you guys are all hearing fine. All right, good. Thank you. So we have these papers. Now, if we look at our directions, they want us to use our 12-inch trimmer and the straight blade to cut numerous L pieces cut from a variety of hues of paper that measure 1/2 inch. We're going to do the same thing with 3/4 inch. Now, here's what I would recommend for my approach, because this is how I did it. Let me grab my sample. If I can very delicately bring it over. All right, you can see here, I've already got a bunch of stuff cut, and I'll talk about the cutting here in a minute. It's like you're cutting a frame, but you're only doing it from 2 sides. If you're working with 4 pieces, that's what I recommend, is doing a 3/4 inch from your 4 different pieces, your 4 different colors, and starting with that. So you can see here, I had 4 different colors, and this is my 3/4 inch bar, my 3/4 inch one. And this actually, let me rotate this around, because in my mind, I know how this goes. I spent this morning going through this so that I could put this together and not look like a crazy person as I was trying to show you guys. So I cut 3/4 inch L, or, half frames from 4 different pieces of paper. I will talk about that in a second, but I just want to show you the reason why I did the 4 different pieces, and I did 3/4 inch each. because it was easy for me just to pick those 4 pieces, and they'll each start. So you can see I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4. All done is 3/4 inch pieces, 3/4 inch L's. Let me grab my trimmer really quick, and I'm going to show you how you can cut. All of your pieces will be cut this way. All right. All of your pieces, you're going to go ahead and cut. You'll put them in your paper, in your trimmer. I like to work horizontal when I'm making frames or making these L cuts. I kind of call them inside cuts because I'm not cutting the outs. I'm wanting to make these inside cuts, but I'm only going to make an L. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to line up at 3/4 of an inch. So here's the one. I'm going to come back 1 full solid line here. That's 3/4 of an inch. Line up my paper on the right edge of my trimmer bed. Shut my blade, or my the blade guide here, I guess. And I want to find the 3/4 inch. There is a ruler on the right-hand bar of your trimming guide here. And you're going to find the 3/4 of an inch. Zero's over here on the right. I can come in. I see 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to find the white mark here, and I'm going to line that up at 3/4 of an inch. And I'll cut. Now I've messed around with this. I want to make sure I'm still at that 3/4 of an inch. We've used this technique when cutting out frames, but this time we're going to cut all the way through the edge of the paper. So I'm starting at 3/4 of an inch here and cutting all the way through. Now I need to cut this side. So the easiest way to do that, honestly, I found, was to rotate my paper here and kind of just flip it over. So my flap here is going to be along that right edge. I'm working on the back side now. I line it back up at 3/4 of an inch. Lining up here. Don't put too much pressure here because I've got a break here. Really what I'm focused on is just making sure that it's lined up. I don't want to see any bubbling right here. Line it up solid along the 3/4 inch line. And then I'll make another starting at that 3/4 inch and cut all the way through. And there I've got my L. This is my 3/4 inch L. You'll repeat this for your different colors. If you want the 1/2 inch, you measure, you line it up at the 1/2 inch and start your cut at 1/2 an inch and then cut through. So you just repeat that. It's a very repetitive measurement, just depending on the size that you're wanting to cut. Now, I did make a mistake. That happens on a regular basis. And I cut one edge at 1/4 inch, and then I cut the next one at 3/4 of an inch. So just, remind yourself as you're doing it, this is 1/2 an inch, this is 1/2 an inch, this is 1/2 an inch, and then you can flip it over 1/2 an inch, 1/2 an inch, just to make sure you have both of your angles here are both the same width. Because I had one, like I said, one side was 3/4 of an inch, one side was 1/4 inch. It didn't work out well. So you're going to do a lot of those. What you can do is, you don't necessarily need to do all of them at once. You can kind of start working around how you think it is. I would say cut a couple, maybe one of each. So you can cut 1 3/4 inch, 1 1/2 inch from each of your 4 papers, and that's going to get you started. So I've got my 4 pieces lined up here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and for assembly. So I know you guys haven't caught up with me. I did the Julia Childs thing where I've got my baked cake out of the oven and I'm ready to decorate, and you guys are still mixing and putting it in the oven. But what I've got here is I'm going to be using my 13 by 13 inch mat, and I'm going to be laying this out. So the cutting of everything is going to take some time, but assembly is really where it's going to be kind of important and take a little bit more time. So that's really why I wanted to work ahead a little bit, get some of the extra pieces already done and cut for you so we can talk about assembly, because that's where we want to make sure that we are taking the time to put things together. Now, I am ready to actually start adhering pieces in place, but when you're first getting started, you're not going to be, right? I would tell you to dry fit everything. And I'm going to tell you, I completely cheated. because I dry fitted everything this morning. I took a picture and then I printed my picture. So I know what I'm doing. And I did that just for the sake of this video. Of course, I wouldn't normally do this. I would probably, if I did dry fit everything, I would take a quick picture, but then I'd have my cell phone right here for me to review while I'm actually gluing pieces into place. But my cell phone currently is right there being put to good use to record. So we are going to start off, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I dry fit pieces in here. I've got one of each, and I'm starting the top piece. This is my top. I lined up with my 45-inch lines. You can see them here. You can see these little white angled pieces, lines. That's where I'm lining up my first piece. I'm using that angle, that 45-degree angle coming right across in the corners. And it doesn't have to be exact. I'm just doing a dry fit. Then I started lining up the other ones. This next piece, my tip is clear down here, right? I'm not coming to a perfect middle. You could if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. I don't think the blog project was that way. I think they're offset a little bit, and that's what I'm going for. So I'm just going to do a basic dry fit. And my goal is to get colors kind of evenly spread throughout the 4 quadrants. This bottom quadrant is smaller. I'm only going to use 2 pieces here, and then I'll fill in with a triangle. We'll talk about the triangles in a little bit. But I took that 1/2 inch of the brown and gold foiled piece that matches here and pulled that in there. So next what I did is I just started working with, if I did the, these are all the 3/4 inch ones. So what I did is I went with a 1/2 inch one next. So, and this is where I started just mixing and matching, and you can move things around. As you can see, we are going to have a lot of overhang that's going to have to be cleaned up. If you're trying to save paper, you can see here, I ultimately would trim off a lot of these pieces. I could piece back additional sections here if I wanted to. If I was doing this off camera and just for myself, I may have done that. But since I'm on camera, I decided I was going to go ahead and just let my paper keep that 90-degree angle rather than having to try to space it out myself. That was probably a little bit of a recipe for disaster. So I'm coming around with each of the 1/2 inch pieces. Now, I remember I have cut some additional ones, so I'm just bringing in, and you can mix and match all your pieces. Cut them as you need them. So when you first put pieces into place, you take a look and say, oh, what do I think needs to go there now? What's my next color that would look good, or my next pattern that I need to show? You don't have to alternate the 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch. I am not. I am, like, these are 2 1/2 inch pieces, and I've got a 3/4, then a 1/2 inch, then a 3/4. So like I said, I really have done the bulk of all the cutting and all the designing, or all of the paper pieces. I worked that out ahead of time just to keep this video from lingering on too much and me having to make choices while I'm talking. I discovered that I'm not always the best at them. I see Amanda made a comment that she stacked and cut her pieces when she cut them. And that's a great idea if you're comfortable stacking and cutting with your trimmer. That is a great way to save some time. So that overall is going to be my layout here. You're going to have room for some triangles we will be putting those triangles into place. I had the option here. I was going to be able, if I wanted to, I could come in with one of each of my 4 starting colors. So I could come in with, I would maybe do the zigzag chevron paper, maybe the gold paper, maybe the black, and then I could come in with the white. You're going to make triangles. I think what I ultimately decided to do is I'm only going to use 2 of my colors. I'm going to use the zigzag and the brown. And I'll put those, so these top and bottom will have the zigzag, because I've got just the spacing wise, that'll work. And that way I'm only making one square that I'll cut in half, right? Rather than having to make squares and triangles of all 4 of my papers, I'm only going to do 2. I'll end up with 4 triangles, and I'll just evenly space those. Also, the reason I did that was because I had my white too close to the outside, and I didn't want to draw too much more attention with the brighter white color. Okay, so now that I feel confident in where my overall placement is, if you're at this point, you would maybe want to take a photo, right? A photo of it, just so you have, in case, who knows, right? Where you are in your process. If you need to reassemble it later, you have your photo that shows everything. So I can just slide my pieces out of the way, because I need to get these 4 middle pieces placed first. That's my goal, is to get the 4 middle pieces adhered. And when I was doing that spacing, one thing I wanted to know, what I was really looking for was, I was looking for enough pieces that I felt like I had an even size triangle space left over. And I didn't measure. It's not going to be exact. It's going to be fine though. I just wanted roughly the same size. Okay, so now it's time for assembly. This is a part you're definitely going to want to use repositionable adhesive. I am only working about the corner first. I am just loosely, I'm not putting any pressure where I put the adhesive. I'm getting it placed in there. I'm using those 45-degree angle marks, like I said, and now I'll tack it down. I've got where I wanted it. Definitely make sure you've got your paper squared on there first. And I've got that first one put in using those guides, those lines, those 45-degree lines. And now I can go ahead and put the other ones. I am not adding any additional adhesive except in this middle section. I will do that later. And the reason is now, in case I have to make any adjustments, I don't have to pull up a ton of adhesive, right? I just have a little bit in the middle. Now, this next piece here, this one is really all about following. I want to have as much of a even spacing between these pieces here, right? That's what I'm going for. I want this grout line to be as even as possible. And then what I'm going to do is let this piece just fall into place. So I lined up this edge, and this edge is just falling where it is. I can, if I need to, I'll add more adhesive later, but this is really what I'm going for. Next, I'm going to put this piece in place. Once again, just using some adhesive, repositionable in the corner. And my goal is to, once again, I'm lining up this edge. I'm going to come down here, and I want to get it as even as possible. The repositionable adhesive lifts off of cardstock and shimmer paper really, really well. That's why I definitely recommend one of those 2 options for your base, because it will just lift so much easier. And of course, the more edges I'm trying to line up, the more challenging it is. But just take your time. It's going to take a few minutes to get these positioned, but taking that time, it will be worth it in the long run, right? That's where you're going to see that you're going to have those nice clean grout lines. Debbie has a great tip, and she says that she uses some repositionable adhesive on her paper to adhere it to her mat, and that is a great idea as well. Use that adhesive, keep things from sliding around. I have a feeling my mat is currently dirty enough that it's got a little built-in adhesive. Now this next piece here is where I'm getting an idea of how good my placement of these 3 pieces were, because I can see I need to bring it down just a little bit. All right, there we go. So those 4 pieces are put into place. I'm still not going to worry about adhering these things in yet. I don't know for sure that I've got everything exactly where I want it. In case I need to make some adjustments, I'm giving myself that option. Now what I'll do is just come in and I'll adhere, once again, just the corners for each additional piece. And these ones are a little bit easier. All I have to do is fit them in, still trying to maintain that 1/8 of an inch, maybe not quite an 1/8 of an inch. You can use whatever size of grout line you want. You can see how these are just coming together really nicely. I mean, this part is actually pretty quick. Once you have all your pieces, you've done your dry fit, you know the order, take the time to put those first pieces in place. I mean, that's the whole, like, the technique of laying tile, right? It's all about that first piece or the first few pieces. I remember when we had tile at our old house, our contractor, he spent forever figuring out exactly where the first tiles needed to go. We had like 3 intersections of rooms, like 2 hallways were intersecting, and then how it was going to feed into a room. And he was very exacting of how he wanted that to be. And it was definitely time well spent. Because once you get the first couple in place, everything else falls into place pretty easily. Now, like I said, I'm going to have some strips left over. I'm going to have some pieces. A lot of these little stripes or little flaps that I'll be slicing off using some scissors probably and just cutting off all the tails that are overhanging. So that's going to be super easy for me to put together a border or some other accent piece. So I'll be able to use all of these strips. I'll just be able to cut them off. I'll put them onto another piece and have maybe a second layout. This is really, I actually have 4 photos. I took a selfie with my husband because I couldn't just like not take a picture with him, right? But this layout uses 3 photos. It does use 4x6 mats, which you could peekaboo. Now, it's supposed to use 3.5 by 5.5 inch photos. And when I printed my photos, so I had to print these at home on I have a Epson PictureMate PM400, and I print them at home. And I printed them to 3.5 by 5 because I could fit 2 on a 5x7. And then I realized that the papers were supposed to be 5.5 inches wide to use with 4x6 mats. And I could have peekaboo pocketed it, easily add that peekaboo pocket and just have another one in there with my husband. But now I'm going to have to custom peekaboo pocket it, which is okay. I can do that if I want to include a picture with my husband, or maybe I'll do a separate little layout. Maybe I'll do a complimentary layout here that talks about, I don't know, goals for 2023. I don't like to call them resolutions, right? We don't want to, things we're looking forward to in 2023. Did you guys have any resolutions or anything like that you guys are doing? Resolutions is such a thing. Or just your goals. Like, what do you want to do? What are you hoping to accomplish this year? This one is not wanting to go down. I don't have significant goals for 20. Maybe, just get a little more on top of some things. I would like my house to be a little cleaner. I keep saying that every year is my goal. But that starts with a major house purge. So, okay, there we go. Finally got that piece into place. We do have our travel plans this summer are all about Washington, I think. So we're going to come up with a bucket list of places in Washington, maybe in southern Canada or southern British Columbia that we want to go see. There's quite a few places we haven't been or we want to revisit now that Cody's a little older. Our older children have been over to the Hoh Rainforest on the Olympic Peninsula, but Cody has not. He doesn't remember any of that. Well, actually, he's never been there. I'm going to rotate this because I can't see it very well. This will let me. The Olympic Peninsula is beautiful. If you're ever planning trips to Washington, I recommend doing it in July or August. The mountains are beautiful. Hiking is wonderful. But a lot of the really pretty places, especially if you're going to go up to Mount Rainier or maybe Mount Baker, all the paths, all the hiking is frozen over until, well, depends on how quickly it thaws. But just to keep that in mind when you're making any travel plans to Washington, July and August are definitely the best years to come. I see Jackie saying that she spends the first 2 months decluttering the house. I feel like I should do that. I should definitely declutter. So here we go. Last piece is going into place. All right, so now from here, what I need to do is I would need to come in and start putting down all of my flaps. So to do this, I am literally just gonna go in, lift, run some adhesive along the general edge. If I don't line it up, the adhesive up correctly, I can just rub the places where it is, and that repositionable will come right up from that shimmer paper. I would say you're going to want to pay attention to your edges where the flaps hit, so that when you're putting a page protector on or sliding it into your top loading sleeve, you're not going to catch all those edges. And you can see that part goes pretty quick. Just keep rotating it all the way around, and then I'll come in and slice those off. You guys have to share if you're making this or you're planning to make it. What collections are you going to use? You're going to mix and match. You can use, you know, I stuck within one collection because that's, well, easy. Creative Memories has done all the work for me to match up my papers. But of course you can mix and match. You could, I use 4 different colors. You could use just a couple if you want to alternate. Maybe you're going to stay more monochromatic. Kim has a great suggestion saying, stay consistent with organization. Yes, that's probably, that's another, what I really just need to do is just to get into consistent habits. First of which needs to be, after I'm done with a project, like in my scrap room, clean up after myself. I'm not great. This one does take a little bit more adhesive. Just this one last piece, and then I'll have them all done. And I'm going to flip it over, use my scissors, and slice off these extra pieces. And like I said, I'll save these. These will all be used for another project, whether I make a border or something else. If you guys do make something with your pieces here, be sure to share it. I mean, if you make your layout, I'd love to see it. Share it on my, you can share it on my Facebook page. You can share it in the Scrapbooking with Megan group that I have. I will definitely have enough to make probably a couple borders. Few more pieces here to cut, and then we'll have it, the background, well, I have to put the triangles on, so we'll do that next. There we go. That is the overall background. So you can see it takes a little bit of time, but it does come together pretty easily. Hopefully you guys see that this is totally a doable one. I mean, when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, am I really going to put this together? But yes. So Tia's asking why I didn't use my 12-inch trimmer for that. Largely because a lot of times when you have this stuff sticking out like that, if I were to put it in my trimmer, those pieces are just going to get tangled up in the bars. And so it was just easier to just go ahead and slice them off with scissors. Probably did take a little bit more time, but then I didn't have to worry about those pieces getting smashed. So now it's time to work. I'm missing one. Oh, I'm missing one piece. I was like, wait a minute. I had set this completely to the side, but I knew I didn't have that big of a triangle there. So let me just put this one on real quick. Okay. One last little snip here, and then we'll talk about these triangles, fitting these triangles into place. Okay, so when it comes to making these triangles, here, I'm going to start with squares, all right? And how I'm going to determine the size of the square I need is I'm going to measure this edge here, because you can imagine here is my square, or maybe it's my rectangle that I would need to cut here. So I'm looking for the edge from this middle point to the outer edge. And for this piece, it's 3 and like 3/8 inches. If I cut this to 3.5 inches wide, that's going to give me 3.5 by 3.5, should give me a square that I'll have to, or excuse me, a square that I can cut into a triangle by cutting on the diagonal. And I will have some extra to trim off, but I would rather have that. I am not looking for something that's going to fit in here exact. I'm okay with an overhang. I will cut that off. As I mentioned before, I am going to put the brown, or excuse me, I'm going to use the zigzag paper and the golden foil paper here. So I'm going to cut a triangle that's going to go, or a square that I'll do the triangle for this piece. It will also come down here. This same pattern will be here, and this side over here will have the gold foil here, and you'll see it on this side too. So they'll be balanced out. Okay, so what I need to do is, because I'm cutting this piece and this piece from the same square, I'm going to cut a square and cut it on the diagonal. I just need to make sure that these edges aren't any more than 3.5 inches. Because if I cut a 3.5 inch square, I know it's going to fit here, but I got to double check that it's going to fit here. So I'm just double checking, and it definitely will. 3.5 will be more than enough to make that work. So I'm going to cut a 3.5 inch square. See, 3.5. And then what I'm going to do here is I wasn't as great about making sure that my zigzags and my horizontal pieces were all right. You can see this one here is a little bit different, but I do want to make sure that my zigzags here follow this big bold zigzag. So I want to make sure that I cut it this direction. So I'm going to as I grab it, I know to put it in my trimmer on the diagonal. So if you have a pattern like that you have to keep track of, you can do that. When I cut the golden foil one, it won't matter. The upside to using things that don't have a direction to the pattern. So here we go. That's going to fit in there, and this one will fit here. So I'm going to go ahead and put those pieces into place. I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on there. And like I said, I'll just trim off any extra. And now I'm going to measure these opposite sides and make sure, find out what size of square I need to cut. So I'm measuring my edge, and it looks like 3.5 will work on this one as well. Yeah, 3.5. And this side here is only 3 inches, so the 3.5 will also work. So the 3.5, that's what I'm going to go ahead and cut. I agree. This one would be a gorgeous wedding layout. Tammy, maybe either the end of the album or the beginning. one of those things where you want to have a little bit more glam and glitz and you don't mind spending a little bit more time. It's not a hard one, I don't think. It's just a little more time consuming. Hopefully you guys will feel like you can give it a shot now that I have showed you how to put it together. The blog directions are great to get you started, but sometimes you just need those little tips. You can see here how that's going to go. So I'm happy. I'm definitely happy. I was thinking, like I mentioned, that I would use one of each of the colors, but I actually think that using just the two different ones works really well. And I'm not adding any more additional of this bright white. I was a little too much, I thought, for a bolder piece where we have these triangles and more of the pattern is showing. So we'll get this put into place, trim out those extras, and then we'll talk photos. I've already got my photos printed. I don't know, did any of you get a photo printer for Christmas? I love my Epson PM400, the PictureMate 400. It's wonderful. I know the selfie is really popular as well. I like the Epson because I can choose the paper I want to print. I can print up to 5x7s. So it actually works really well. Now, here is where I think I will go ahead and grab my trimmer to cut these edges off, because I know it's all going to fit in here super easy. So I just come in here, line up my paper with my cut line, and trim. Get those. These edges will just be scrap. They will go in the trash. All right, so there's the background. Like I said, you don't really want to cover it up, right? You just want to use it as is. It is super pretty. I love all of the beautiful, the foil detail that's in here is really, really nice. So Kathy's asking about my Epson printer, and I have an Epson PictureMate PM400. It's a small, it just is just designed for photos. So it's not like a big printer. It's not a multi-purpose printer. It's just for photos. So I have one of those. I got it off of Amazon. You will want to watch when on Amazon, sometimes they get a little bit jacked up in prices. I think retails for about $250-ish, somewhere in there. So if you see something that's marked heavily above that, definitely don't get it. But it is a nice little thing. I do not print all my photos on it. I print selectively when I need something urgently. So for this one, since I didn't have time to order any photos, it was great for me to go ahead and just get them from, use my printer for that. Okay. So here are my photos. The other thing is this particular layout used 2 horizontal and 1 vertical. They talk about using 4x6 mats. So they cut 4x6 white mats. And then they have 3 of the 3.5 by 5.5 inch photos. My photos are 3.5 by 5 because I printed them side by side as a 5x7 on my printer and then cut it in half. So yeah, Jackie, if you're looking on Amazon and seeing it listed as $449 for the Epson printer, that is definitely not the price to pay. If you can't find it there, you can also check BH Photo Video. I don't know if that's the website. It's B&H Photo Video, and they're out of New York City. They sometimes have it for regular retail. So that would be a place to check if you're hot to trot to get it sooner than later and Amazon doesn't have it for a good price. Amazon, some of the retailers will mark them up based on demand. But I printed these as 5x7s. One 5x7, if you print it, you can get 2 3.5 by 5s on there, and then I trimmed them apart. So here are my selfies with my kids. And I am just gonna, let's see, we'll probably do like this. So you can see. There's my oldest, my 16-year-old, and then fun little Cody. And I thought it was cute that he was wearing the Happy New Year, these little novelty glasses. So now what I need to do here is I need to figure out, am I going to use a white cardstock for my mats, or am I going to use am I going to use white or am I going to use black? The downside to black is I don't know that my photos stand out as well on it. There's the black. And I have white shimmer paper, but the white shimmer is a little bit creamier. I don't think I'm going to use the white shimmer. It's a little too creamy. So I have just some white cardstock. This is a insert from, I think I like the black. I don't know. Let me scroll down here so I can see your guys' comments to see if you guys have any. I think I'm going to use black. I think I'll use the black shimmer. I thought I would use white, but I wasn't sure. Yes, my 16-year-old is my mini-me, for sure, for sure. But it's really funny. I don't know if you guys have little mini-me's. My particular mini-me looks a lot like me, but we're very, definitely different personalities. We also, they don't necessarily like all the foods that I like all my favorite foods. I love olives and they're like, whatever. I love, what is the other thing that, we were just having this conversation about at Christmas time for Christmas dinner, what we were talking about that they really enjoy, but, or the foods I really like that they don't really care for, but olives is a big one. I don't know how you get to be a child of mine and not love black olives, not green, black olives. Okay. So I'm going to use black shimmer paper. My photos are 3.5 by 5. So I'm going to go ahead with that chunky mat. You can see we've got a chunky mat here, right? So it's a full 1/2 inch bigger than my photos. So I need it to be a 5.5 by 4 inch photo or 4 inch mat. So I'm going to come out here to 5.5 inches, which is the very edge of my white trimmer bed. Right here is 5.5 inches. So I'm going to come out here, trim it, 5.5. Now these just need to be 4 inches wide, so I will be able to get 3 of them out of this 12-inch section. So there's kind of how the pictures are going to go on. Now it would be time for all the additional embellishments. They do have a journal box here that they include. And you can see one of the things they do is they do tuck some of these pieces under the triangles that we've put in place. So I've used repositionable adhesive, so it should not be a problem to lift those triangles up. So that will be something that I will do once I get everything situated and figure out exactly how I'm doing this. I need to figure out if how I'm gonna get the year on here so that we know that it was New Year's Eve for 2023. And I'll probably play around a little bit with the embellishments. They give you some great ideas here on how to do it. My orientation is a little bit different because of how things are. I might come in here with a little circle detail that I could put, New Year's 2023. If I want to put some journaling in there, I don't know how much journaling I necessarily need to put. Maybe just a quick little blurb about where we went. I mean, I could put a whole story. Like this Christmas thing was like a disaster, right? For my family. Literally, I came home on New Year's on the 30th and was able to see my kids, all that fun stuff. So I see Jill's asking, do I use regular adhesive? No, I don't think I'll need to go back and put regular adhesive on here. Repositionable does hold just fine. It should be fine. So you could use regular if you wanted to, but repositionable was just here and handy. And you could see in here, I would lift these up and I could slide it under if I wanted to. I'll make that decision once I have everything in place. You don't have to do that aspect of it. The goal here really was to get this background put together. And of course, there's all the wonderful embellishments from the silver and gold collection. I could just come in here and start adding or figure out which ones I want to put in place. And add those little details. So that is, those little details I'll probably work off camera. I want to sit, make sure I give myself that time to hem and haw over it a little bit, figure out if I'm going to punch out some letters, or if I'm just going to do, how exactly I'm going to do it. I've got a lot going on here in the background. So I feel like if I were to use my die cut or use some stickers to do the year, I need to make like a little tag or a little banner down here at the bottom that would say to where I could put, the NYE. So what do you put? NYE 23? Is that how I should do it? I get a little confused. Like, yeah, because it's New Year's Eve 2023. So that is probably, like I said, I'll work on those details. I do see a question though from Sharon asking about how do I digitally save blog posts to organize? I have them so I'll go through the blog and I will look for layouts that I think might be fun to do as part of a Scrapbook Live. And then I just save them to a book, to a folder. And that is kind of how I approach this. Generally, that's for me how it works. You could do something like a spreadsheet if you wanted to, if that's kind of something how you like to organize, where you could go in and put a spreadsheet and maybe you would type in the collection or the name in two different columns. So the collection name in one column, and then you could maybe in another column or two list the tools that were used, especially for borders, punches that were used. And then you can just include the link in that spreadsheet and you just click on the link when you want to go find, hey, I want to use the new brocade chain border maker cartridge. So what light ideas from the blog? Or you can just go to the blog and type in the search bar and say brocade chain, and it will then bring up anything that references the brocade chain. So sometimes just using the blog, using the search feature on the blog is going to be the easiest. So all right, New Year's 2023. So I see a question about the printout for this live. The printout is on my blog. There's the first comment of this live feed should show the live or the handout. So yeah, if you're catching this on here and you just joined us, you're late. You're not late. You just joined us when you joined us, right? It's all fine. You'll be able to see the recording of this later on YouTube. I'll get it uploaded. So, and then I think Hazel asked, once I've done the page, do I delete the, no, Hazel, I don't delete anything. That's like a button I don't like to use. In all reality, I probably should, but I keep it on there. I probably should just reorganize my folders because it reminds me what I've already done as part of a Scrapbook Live. I am more than happy to always go back and redo, use layouts again. Something like this is a little bit more of a statement one, so I may not necessarily reuse it any place that's going to be easily recognizable as something I've already done before. So maybe this is a New Year's Eve layout. Maybe I would do it as part of my son's or one of my kids' graduation, like something, a really special photo for something to be in their personal album versus something for a family album. I just want to make sure if I am going to use it, that I'm kind of spacing them away from each other a little bit. But I have no problems reusing layouts that I've already done, whether they're blog project sketches or project recipes that Creative Memory has. I'll reuse them. You know why? If it works, it works. Especially once you put one together, it's easy to do the second one, right? So let me see. I just quick catch up on any comments. So yeah, the link is pinned in the comments. And Cody's glasses do say Happy New Year. And that is kind of funny because it does, sometimes your photos will have your title right in it, right? So, all right, I think, so Hazel said she prints the make pages and she trashes the handouts. Oh, well, so we did ask, okay, the handouts, I try to put the handouts themselves into binders that I have, largely because I can take those with me to my in-person events, and my customers will have those available if they want to go through and do it, especially if I'm really smart and I try to make sure they know that there is a video that goes with it if they want to follow along while they're at the event and make that. But oftentimes I'll cut those pieces up to use as, I'll take 8.5 by 11 and just chop it up to make placeholder photos, and I'm just trying to figure out how spacing might go for a layout. So though I don't always make it into my binder, but then I'm always struggling right before an event and printing out a bunch of stuff. So I probably should be more efficient with my paper usage there. All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining me today, checking one last time through these comments. If you had a chance to put this layout together in the next day or two or whatever, please share it with me. I'd love to see it. I have the Scrapbooking with Megan group that you are more than welcome to join on Facebook. And you can also post it to my page or any of the other layouts. You can share this one wherever you want. If you put it together, be proud of it. It's a beautiful layout. I can't wait to see how you guys have chosen your papers to combine. We will gather together next week. Somebody in the comments a while ago did ask, how often do I do these? Well, we're back to doing them weekly. So we will have a few more this month. And the end of the month, I always do on the last Wednesday of the month, we will do borders. So I don't know what we're doing next week. I'm still flying by the seat of my pants for a few things as I get caught up and jumping into 2023. So we will have something next week, a project that we will be doing. And then, of course, like I said, the last Wednesday of the month is borders. So I do them live on Facebook, and then ultimately the handouts I get live on Facebook. Then the recordings get put to YouTube because I'm just not quite ready to go live on YouTube yet. That just adds another layer of complexity. And if you want the handouts, you can get them from my blog. I always have them listed either in the YouTube YouTube description, or they're the first comment here on the Facebook Live. If you go to my blog, meganjax.com, so Megan with 2 G's, you can, in the upper kind of right-hand corner, especially if you're on your computer, you will see a thing where you can subscribe to my blog. And when you subscribe to my blog, you will get an email notification when I publish a post. I publish the post every Tuesday morning with the handouts for the next day's Scrapbook Live. So if you want to get those handouts right to your inbox, go ahead and subscribe to my blog, and you'll get those easily so you can find them. And all I'm doing is copying and pasting over from the Creative Memories blog. Whenever you need a project idea, if you're stuck, the blog is a great place to go. Take advantage of the search function, search the tool you want to use, search the theme you want to, whether it's a Christmas or it's a summer vacation or whatever it may be. You can search as general terms. You can also search by collection, and it'll pull up some great ideas there for you. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Just a quick shout out, if you guys are looking for some great inspiration, something to keep you motivated this winter as we get through these few months of kind of the dark, cold days of winter here in North America, you can join Tessa and I for Winter Frolic. Let me see. I don't see if I do this right. I have a little thing I can show you guys. Nope, that's not. There it is. Winter Frolic Scrap Challenge. So it started on Sunday, but we're only a couple days into it. It goes all the way through till February 25th. And so how Winter Frolic works is that on Mondays, we share a new challenge layout. So this is a layout that is just to get you motivated, get you doing some stuff. And then on Thursdays, we share a throwback, kind of a project that's already been, we just refresh it. We take a project that we have either shared before or something else, and we refresh it, and, just keeping you motivated. And then we have a event group that has a lot of sharing that happens in there. So you get to see what everybody else is creating. We do page completion kind of a contest, right? We have a little sheet where you guys can keep track of the number of layouts you've done. And we also have what we call Scrapboard. It has all these fun little tasks for you guys to complete. And then you can earn prizes at the very end of the challenge. So if you have any questions on that or want to register, you can do it at meganandtessa.com and you'll see the details on there. All right. Once again, thanks so much for joining me today. I will see you all next week. Take care.